The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian cast fractured light across white tablecloths, each beam catching on silverware that cost more than most people's monthly rent. It was 7:30 on a Friday evening, and the restaurant hummed with the particular frequency of wealth. Low voices discussing acquisitions, the clink of wine glasses containing liquids older than the servers pouring them, the rustle of silk and cashmere as diners shifted in chairs upholstered in Italian leather. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Maya Torres stood near the kitchen doors, her black server's uniform pressed to perfection. A small notepad tucked into her apron pocket alongside 3 pens. One for writing, 2 as backup, because being unprepared wasn't an option when you worked at a place where the average dinner check exceeded $1,000. She'd been smoothing down the same section of apron for the past 30 seconds, a nervous habit she developed during her first week here, back when every table felt like a test she might fail. "Table 7 needs water," whispered Marcus, brushing past her with an empty tray. He was 23, 3 years younger than Maya, with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up around money and saw this job as a gap-year adventure rather than a lifeline. "The woman keeps looking at her glass like it personally offended her." Maya nodded, reaching for a pitcher, but her attention snagged on the commotion building near the entrance. Through the archway that separated the dining room from the foyer, she could see Gerald, the maitre d', his usually composed face showing the first cracks of strain. He was speaking with a man in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's car, if she still had a car, which she didn't, not since she'd sold it 4 months ago to cover her grandmother's medication. The man's voice rose, sharp and cutting, though his words were lost in the ambient noise of the dining room. Behind him stood 2 other men, equally well-dressed, and a woman whose diamond necklace caught the light like a constellation. Gerald's hands moved in small, placating gestures, but the man in the charcoal suit wasn't placating. He was escalating. "Someone's about to have a very bad night," murmured Shanice, appearing at Maya's elbow. She'd been working at the Meridian for 7 years, long enough to read the warning signs of a disaster before it fully materialized. Her dark eyes assessed the situation with the precision of a general surveying a battlefield. "That's Hiroshi Takahashi. Made his fortune in tech, worth about $3 billion at last count. Comes in twice a year, usually for major business dinners. Always requests the private dining room." "Why's he upset?" Maya asked, watching as Gerald attempted to guide the group toward the back of the restaurant. "Can't you tell?" Shanice raised an eyebrow. "Look at his face. That's not my reservation got messed up angry. That's someone fundamentally disrespected me angry." The group moved through the dining room now, impossible to ignore. Takahashi's voice carried over the ambient conversation. Words Maya couldn't understand but whose meaning was crystal clear in their tone. Sharp, demanding, furious. He was speaking Japanese, rapid-fire sentences that hit the air like accusations. Gerald walked beside him, face reddening, making apologetic noises that only seemed to fuel the fire. The other diners had begun to notice. Conversations dipped and paused. Heads turned with the careful casualness of people who'd been trained since birth not to stare but couldn't quite help themselves. This was dinner theater of a different kind, the kind that ended up as whispered anecdotes at country clubs and board meetings, the kind that could damage reputations. "Why isn't anyone helping him?" Maya heard herself ask, though she already knew the answer. The Meridian employed a floor manager, 3 sommeliers, a general manager, and 16 servers for the evening shift. Not one of them apparently spoke Japanese, because no one here speaks anything but English, French if we're lucky, and some questionable high school Spanish, Shanice said, her voice dropping. "And Takahashi knows it. He's making a point." The group reached the center of the dining room, and suddenly Takahashi stopped. Just stopped, his expensive shoes silent against the plush carpet, and turned to face the room. His face was composed now, which somehow made everything worse. The fury had crystallized into something colder, more deliberate. He spoke again in Japanese, his voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. Whatever he was saying, it felt like a pronouncement, a judgment. Gerald stood frozen beside him, his mouth opening and closing uselessly. The woman with the diamond necklace touched Takahashi's arm, said something soft that might have been a plea to continue to their table, but he shook his head once, decisive. Maya felt her feet moving before her brain fully caught up with the decision. She handed the water pitcher to a bewildered Marcus and crossed the dining room, weaving between tables where diners sat in various states of discomfort and fascination. She heard Shanice hiss her name behind her. A warning? A question? Maybe both. But she didn't stop. The words formed in her mind, dusted off from a place she usually kept locked tight. Her grandmother's voice echoed beneath them, patient and warm, correcting her pronunciation, praising her progress, telling her that language was a bridge, that knowing how to cross it was a gift. Maya reached the group just as Takahashi turned toward the exit, his decision apparently made. Gerald looked at her with wild eyes, the expression of a drowning man who just spotted something that might be a life raft but could just as easily be a piece of driftwood. "Excuse me," Maya said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. Then, switching languages like changing keys in a piece of music, she continued in Japanese. "I apologize for the confusion, Takahashi-san. Please allow me to help resolve whatever issue has occurred." The silence that followed was absolute. Takahashi turned slowly, his dark eyes finding her with laser focus. The other members of his party stared. Gerald's mouth had fallen fully open now, and across the dining room, Maya could feel every eye in the place locked onto this moment. Takahashi studied her for what felt like an hour compressed into seconds. Then he responded in Japanese, his words still sharp but now directed at her. Testing her perhaps. "You speak Japanese?" "Yes," Maya replied, still in Japanese. "Not perfectly, but well enough to help, I hope." "What seems to be the problem?" Something shifted in Takahashi's expression. Not quite softening, but recalibrating. He gestured at Gerald, then at the room around them, and spoke in rapid Japanese that Maya had to concentrate to follow. He explained that he'd called 3 days ago to request specific accommodations for this dinner. A private room, yes, but also specific dishes that required advance notice, dietary restrictions for one of his guests, and most importantly, he'd asked to have someone available who could communicate with his business partners from Osaka, who spoke limited English and were crucial to a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. None of this had been communicated to anyone. The private room had been given to another party. The kitchen had no record of his requests. And when he'd arrived and attempted to explain the situation, no one, not one single person in this establishment that charged $50 for an appetizer, could understand him. Maya listened, her heart sinking with each detail. This wasn't a small oversight. This was a catastrophic failure of communication, the kind that ended business relationships and got people fired. As Takahashi spoke, she began to understand that his anger wasn't really about the room or the food. It was about being invisible. About being someone who could move billions of dollars with a phone call but couldn't make himself understood in a restaurant he'd patronized for years. When he finished, Maya took a breath. "I understand completely, and you're right to be upset. What happened was unacceptable, and I apologize on behalf of the restaurant." She kept her Japanese formal, respectful, using the proper levels of politeness that her grandmother had drilled into her during those long afternoons in the small apartment that always smelled like green tea and sesame oil. "Would you be willing to give us an opportunity to correct this? I know the private room is occupied, but I believe I can arrange something that might work even better." Takahashi's eyebrow raised slightly. "Such as?" Maya's mind raced through the restaurant's layout, through the evening's reservations that she glimpsed on Gerald's podium earlier. "The garden terrace," she said. "It's not usually used this time of year because it's been too cold, but the heating lamps are operational, and it's completely private. More private than the standard private room, actually. And I can work with the kitchen to prepare the dishes you requested. If you can give me about 30 minutes, I believe we can make this right." She switched to English, turning to Gerald. "The garden terrace. It's available, right?" Gerald blinked, then nodded rapidly. Yes, absolutely. We'd need to. I'll take care of it." Maya cut in, then back to Japanese. "Takahashi-san, would you and your guests be comfortable waiting in the lounge? I'll have drinks sent immediately, on the house, of course." and I'll personally make sure everything is arranged to your specifications." Takahashi looked at her for a long moment. The restaurant held its collective breath. Then finally he nodded once. 30 minutes, he said in Japanese. "After that, I'm leaving, and I won't be returning." "Understood," Maya replied. Then with a small bow, not too deep, which would seem obsequious, but deep enough to show genuine respect, she added, "Thank you for giving us this chance." As Gerald guided the group toward the lounge, the dining room slowly exhaled. Conversations resumed, though Maya could feel the curious glances following her as she headed back toward the kitchen. Shanice intercepted her halfway there, eyes wide. "Girl, what did you just do?" "Bought us 30 minutes to fix this," Maya said, her heart hammering now that the adrenaline was catching up with her. "I need to talk to Chef Rodriguez immediately, and someone needs to get the garden terrace ready for 6 people. "You speak Japanese?" Marcus appeared on her other side, incredulous. "Since when?" "Since always," Maya said, pushing through the kitchen doors into the controlled chaos of the back of house. "Now help me, or get out of the way." The kitchen was its own world. Hot, loud, and moving at a speed that would seem frantic anywhere else, but here was simply Friday night. Chef Rodriguez stood at the pass, a stocky man with tattooed forearms and the intense focus of a surgeon, calling out orders in a mix of English and Spanish. Maya approached him, aware that interrupting a chef during dinner service was roughly equivalent to poking a sleeping bear, but she was out of options. "Chef, I need 3 minutes," she said, her voice firm. Rodriguez looked up, irritation flashing across his face, but something in her expression made him pause. "Make it 2. Maya explained the situation in rapid-fire sentences, Takahashi's original requests, the miscommunication, the 30-minute deadline. She pulled out her phone, where she'd already started typing notes from memory, the dishes he'd mentioned translated into terms the kitchen would understand. Rodriguez listened, his jaw tightening. When she finished, he was quiet for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Then he turned to his sous chef. "Carlos, you're running the pass. Miguel, I need you on fish. Stephanie, pastry is yours for the next hour." He looked back at Maya. "You got 25 minutes now. I'll make it work, but you better be right about what he wants." "I am," Maya said, hoping she was, hoping her Japanese was good enough, hoping her memory hadn't failed her. The next 20 minutes moved like a fever dream. Maya coordinated between the kitchen, the front of house, and the maintenance staff who had to get the garden terrace ready. She called in favors from servers she barely knew, convinced the sommelier to pull bottles from the reserve collection, and personally went through the terrace to make sure every detail was perfect. The space transformed under her direction. The heating lamps created a warm glow against the October chill. Tables were arranged to allow for both formal dining and casual conversation. Fresh flowers appeared from somewhere. Shanice's doing, Maya learned later. The lighting was adjusted 3 times until it struck the right balance between intimate and professional. At minute 27, Maya returned to the lounge where Takahashi and his guests waited. The 2 men from Osaka were speaking quietly with each other, while the woman with the diamond necklace checked her phone. Takahashi sat slightly apart, his expression unreadable. Maya approached and bowed slightly. "Takahashi-san, everything is ready. If you would follow me?" She led them through the restaurant, acutely aware of the eyes following their procession. The garden terrace was accessed through a set of French doors at the back of the dining room, and as Maya opened them, she held her breath. The space had been transformed. Warm light spilled from the lamps, creating an oasis against the evening darkness. The table was set with the Meridian's finest. Crystal that caught and refracted the light, silverware that gleamed, napkins folded into elaborate shapes that somehow seemed appropriate rather than pretentious. A small portable heater hummed quietly in the corner, and someone had even managed to find music, something classical and Japanese that Maya didn't recognize but that made Takahashi pause at the threshold. He stepped onto the terrace, and Maya watched his face carefully. The other guests followed, the 2 men from Osaka immediately breaking into appreciative murmurs. The woman smiled for the first time that evening. "The first course will be served in 10 minutes, Maya said in Japanese. I've taken the liberty of selecting a sake pairing based on the menu, but if you'd prefer something else, please let me know. I'll be your server for the evening, along with my colleague Marcus, who will be assisting. If you need anything at all, I'll be available. Takahashi turned to face her fully. What's your name? Maya Torres, sir. Torres, he repeated, the Spanish surname sitting strangely in his Japanese inflected speech. How does a waitress named Torres speak Japanese? It wasn't really a question that required an answer, or rather, it required more of an answer than she could give standing here with 6 people waiting to sit down. But something in his tone suggested this mattered to him, that the answer was important. My grandmother, Maya said simply. She taught me, said it was important to understand more than one way of seeing the world. Something flickered across Takahashi's face. Recognition, perhaps, or memory. He nodded slowly. Your grandmother was a wise woman. Maya corrected gently. She is a wise woman. Another nod, this one more pronounced. I see. He paused, then added, Thank you, Torres, for this, for understanding. The rest of the dinner service passed in a blur of controlled precision. Maya moved between the kitchen and the terrace, translating, anticipating needs before they were voiced, coordinating between Chef Rodriguez's creations and Takahashi's expectations. The food was perfect, each dish a small masterpiece that honored the requests Takahashi had made while showcasing the Meridian's capabilities. The men from Osaka relaxed, their conversation growing animated. Business was discussed, Maya gathered, though she carefully didn't listen too closely to the details. Some things weren't her business, even if she could understand them. Around 9:30, as dessert was being cleared, Takahashi asked Maya to join them at the table. It was unusual, servers didn't sit with guests, but this entire evening had been unusual. She sat on the edge of a chair, aware of Gerald watching from inside the restaurant, his expression hovering somewhere between amazement and concern. You saved the evening, Takahashi said, this time in English, presumably for the benefit of everyone present. And possibly a very significant business deal. I wonder, where did you learn Japanese? Your accent suggests more than casual study. And so Maya found herself telling the story she usually kept private. About her grandmother, Keiko Torres, who'd been born in Kyoto and had met Maya's grandfather, a Marine stationed in Japan, in the 1950s. About how Keiko had moved to America, learned English, raised a family, but never forgot her first language. About the afternoons after school when Maya would sit at her grandmother's kitchen table, learning hiragana and katakana, memorizing vocabulary, practicing the complex dance of Japanese politeness levels. She wanted me to understand where part of me came from, Maya explained. Even though I look more like my grandfather, she gestured at her brown skin, her dark curly hair, features that reflected her grandfather's Mexican heritage more than her grandmother's Japanese ancestry. She wanted me to carry the language, said it was a kind of inheritance. And do you see her often? The woman with the diamond necklace asked. Her English was accented but clear, her tone genuinely curious rather than merely polite. Maya hesitated, then decided on honesty. Every day, I live with her, take care of her. She's 87 now, and her health isn't what it used to be. She didn't mention the medical bills, the way her entire life had reorganized itself around her grandmother's needs, how she'd given up the apartment she'd shared with roommates to move into the small 2-bedroom where she'd spent so many childhood afternoons. Didn't mention the student loans still hanging over her head from the degree she'd never quite finished, or the physical therapy appointments, or the specialist consultations that insurance covered barely half of. Takahashi studied her with those sharp, assessing eyes. And yet you work here. Long hours, I imagine. The tips are good, Maya said simply. Better than most places. And the schedule is flexible enough that I can be home when she needs me. What she didn't say, that she'd chosen the Meridian specifically because it closed on fun days, giving her one guaranteed day each week when she didn't have to choose between her grandmother and her paycheck, that she'd worked her way up from the worst shifts to Friday and Saturday evenings, where the money was best, that every dollar she made was carefully allocated. Rent, medicine, food, utilities, with almost nothing left over for anything resembling a life of her own. The conversation moved on, but something had shifted in Takahashi's demeanor. He became more relaxed, more open, sharing stories about his own family, about growing up in Tokyo, about the challenges of doing business across cultures and languages. The men from Osaka joined in, and Maya found herself translating not out of necessity but out of inclusion, helping everyone at the table participate in the conversation. As the evening wound down past 11, Takahashi stood and shook Maya's hand, an American gesture that felt significant coming from him. "You have a gift," he said, "both with language and with understanding what people need. That's rare." "Thank you," Maya replied, unsure what else to say. The group departed, leaving behind a tip that made Maya's eyes widen when she counted it later, 40%, an almost unheard of amount at this level of dining, where 15 to 20 was standard. But more than that, they left behind something else. A business card that Takahashi had pressed into her hand as he left, with a single sentence in English on the back, "Call me Monday." Maya stood on the garden terrace after they'd gone, the heating lamps still radiating warmth into the October night, and wondered what had just happened. Through the French doors, she could see the restaurant finishing up its evening service. Last tables lingering over coffee and cognac, servers beginning the long process of breakdown and cleanup that would carry them past midnight. Shanice appeared in the doorway. "Girl, you have some explaining to do." "I know," Maya said, still staring at the business card. "Gerald wants to see you in his office." "Of course he does." But as Maya followed Shanice back into the restaurant, business card tucked carefully into her apron pocket next to the 3 pens, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally shifted. The evening felt like a door opening, though to what, she couldn't yet say. And underneath it all was a question she couldn't quite articulate. How much did she owe her grandmother's memory, and how much did she owe the woman herself, still living, still needing her, still waiting at home in the small apartment where the air always smelled like green tea and sesame oil? Maya's alarm went off at 6:15 on Saturday morning, the cheerful marimba sound completely at odds with the 3 hours of sleep she'd managed after getting home past 2 a.m. She reached out from under her blanket, worn thin from years of use, a relic from her college days, and silenced the phone, then lay still for a moment, listening to the familiar sounds of the apartment waking up around her. The building was old, built in the 1960s when this neighborhood had been middle-class respectable rather than the awkward in-between it was now, too expensive for what it offered but not nice enough to attract the kind of redevelopment that was sweeping through other parts of the city. The radiator in the corner hissed and clanked, a sound Maya had learned meant it was actually working, which was preferable to the alternative. Through the thin walls came the muffled sounds of the Patel family next door, their youngest crying, Mrs. Patel's gentle shushing, the smell of something spicy and wonderful cooking even at this early hour. Maya pushed herself up, her body protesting. Her feet ached from the 7 hours she'd spent on them last night, and there was a particular soreness in her lower back that she knew would only get worse as the day progressed. She was 26, too young to feel this old. But that's what happened when you worked nights and weekends at a job that demanded physical endurance alongside mental sharpness. The apartment was small. Small enough that Maya could see almost all of it from her bedroom door. The living room, kitchen, and dining area were really just one space, divided by a change in flooring and strategic furniture placement. Her grandmother's bedroom door was closed, and Maya moved quietly, not wanting to wake her yet. These early morning hours, when the apartment was silent and the world outside still mostly asleep, were sometimes the only peace Maya got. She made coffee in the small French press that had been a birthday gift from her college roommate, back when birthday gifts were still a thing that happened in her life. The coffee was cheap, bought in bulk from a discount store, but she'd learned to make it strong enough that it didn't matter. While it steeped, she pulled out her phone and looked at the business card she'd photographed last night, too nervous to trust that she wouldn't lose the physical card itself. Hiroshi Takahashi Global Ventures. Call me Monday. What did that mean? Job offer? Thank you lunch? Some kind of networking opportunity that would ultimately lead nowhere. Maya had learned not to put too much faith in promises from wealthy people, even well-meaning ones. Rich people lived in a different reality, where "let's get coffee sometime" actually meant something rather than being a polite way to end a conversation. Still, the tip from last night sat in her wallet now, already mentally allocated. $200 could cover her grandmother's medication copays for the month, with enough left over for maybe, just maybe, new work shoes. The ones she had were developing holes in the soles that she'd been patching with cardboard, a trick her grandfather had taught her years ago. At 6:45, Maya heard movement from her grandmother's room. The shuffle of slippers on hardwood, a soft cough. She poured a second cup of coffee, this one weaker and with warm milk, exactly how her grandmother liked it, and knocked gently on the bedroom door. "Oh, bacon? I'm coming in." Her grandmother's room was the larger of the two bedrooms, though that wasn't saying much. Maya had insisted on this arrangement when she'd moved in 2 years ago, arguing that her grandmother needed the space for her physical therapy exercises and the various medical equipment that had gradually accumulated. The room smelled like the mentholated cream her grandmother used for her arthritis and the lavender sachets Maya bought at the dollar store because they reminded her grandmother of something from her childhood in Kyoto. Keiko Torres sat on the edge of her bed, dressed in a worn silk nightgown that had probably been beautiful once, her thin white hair loose around her shoulders. She looked up as Maya entered, and her face, lined with age but still lovely in its bone structure, still recognizably the young woman from the black and white wedding photo on the dresser, broke into a smile. "You're home late," Keiko said in Japanese. It was how they always spoke together, Maya's grandmother having decided years ago that if Maya was going to learn the language, she needed to practice it. "There was an incident at work," Maya replied, also in Japanese, handing over the coffee. "Good incident, actually. I'll tell you about it." They moved through their morning routine with the easy synchronization of 2 years' practice. Maya helped her grandmother to the bathroom, then to the small kitchen table where breakfast was always the same: rice, miso soup made from powder because the real thing took too long, and whatever else Maya could pull together quickly. Today it was leftover grilled fish from Thursday night's dinner and some pickled vegetables. As they ate, Maya told the story of last night. Takahashi's arrival, his fury, the way no one could understand him. She described the frantic preparation, the garden terrace, the way the evening had transformed from disaster to success. "And then he gave me his business card," Maya finished, "and told me to call him Monday. What do you think that means?" Keiko was quiet for a moment, her chopsticks hovering over her rice bowl. When she was younger, Maya had learned, her grandmother had been known for her quick mind and sharp business sense. She'd worked as a translator at the naval base where she'd met Maya's grandfather, then later as an interpreter for various businesses trying to expand into Japanese markets. But the strokes, 2 small ones 3 years apart, had slowed her down, made her need more time to process, to find words that used to come easily. "He sees something in you," Keiko said finally. "Something useful. Maybe just gratitude. Maybe more. What should I do?" "Call him Monday," her grandmother said, as if it was obvious. "What do you have to lose?" "Everything," Maya thought but didn't say. "I have everything to lose. I have this job that pays enough to keep us afloat. I have this routine that works, barely. I have this fragile balance, and anything that disrupts it could send us tumbling." But out loud she just said, "Maybe," and changed the subject to the grocery list they needed to make for the week. After breakfast, Maya helped her grandmother with her physical therapy exercises, 15 minutes of gentle stretching and range of motion work that the therapist had prescribed. They did this in the living room, where Maya had cleared space by moving the coffee table against the wall. The exercises were tedious, repetitive, and Keiko hated them, but Maya had learned to make them bearable by filling the time with conversation, stories, memories of when Maya was young and would visit this same apartment with her parents. "Tell me about the restaurant again," Keiko said as she lifted her left arm, the one that still didn't quite straighten all the way. "The beautiful one, with the garden." Maya had described the Meridian 100 times, but she described it again, adding new details about the garden terrace, the way the light looked, the flowers Shanice had found. Her grandmother listened with her eyes closed, and Maya knew she was building a picture in her mind, visiting a place she would likely never see in person. They'd stopped going out much after the second stroke. The stairs to the apartment were too difficult, and the wheelchair Maya had borrowed from a medical supply charity was old and awkward, making even simple trips to the grocery store exhausting for both of them. So instead, Keiko traveled through Maya's descriptions, living vicariously through stories of a world beyond these 4 rooms. At 9:30, Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Gerald. Need to see you before your shift tonight. Come in at 4 instead of 5. Her stomach dropped. In restaurant work, need to see you rarely meant anything good. Had she overstepped last night? Had someone complained about her taking charge? Had she broken some protocol she didn't know about? Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Problem? Keiko asked, watching Maya's face. Just work stuff. I need to go in early. Then you should rest, her grandmother said firmly. Go. Sleep. I can manage for a few hours. But Maya couldn't sleep. She tried. Lay in her bed with the curtains drawn, willing her mind to quiet, but kept running through the previous night's events, analyzing every decision, every word, looking for the mistake that was going to cost her this job. At noon, she gave up and started on the weekend chores. Laundry first, hauling the basket down 2 flights of stairs to the basement where the building's ancient machines wheezed and groaned their way through wash cycles. While she waited, she studied. The tablet she'd bought used 3 years ago was worth less than $50 now, but it still held her textbooks, digital copies of the business courses she'd been taking online, trying to finish the degree she'd abandoned when her grandmother got sick. 1 class at a time when she could afford the tuition. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. She was currently working through a course on international business relations, which had seemed completely theoretical until last night, when suddenly all those concepts about cultural differences and communication barriers had crystallized into concrete reality. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Shanice. Whatever Gerald wants to talk about, don't let him intimidate you. You saved our asses last night. We all know it. Maya smiled despite her nervousness. Shanice had taken her under her wing when Maya first started at the Meridian, teaching her the unwritten rules that separated adequate servers from excellent ones. How to read a table's mood, how to anticipate needs, how to handle difficult guests without ever appearing flustered. She'd been the one to suggest that Maya try for the Friday night shifts, where the tips were best, and had backed her up when some of the other servers complained about the new girl getting premium shifts. Thanks, Maya texted back. Probably just wants to yell at me for stepping out of my lane. Then let him yell. You still saved the day. At 3:15, Maya dressed carefully in her server's uniform. Black slacks, white button-down shirt, black vest. She kept 2 complete sets and alternated, washing one while wearing the other, because they needed to be perfect every single shift. She checked her appearance in the small mirror by the door. Hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup, her grandmother's pearl earrings that she always wore for luck. You look beautiful, Keiko said from her chair by the window, where she'd been reading a Japanese newspaper that a neighbor brought by once a week. I look nervous, Maya corrected. That too, but also beautiful, confident, like someone who knows her worth. Maya kissed her grandmother's forehead. I'll be back late. There's dinner in the fridge. The curry from yesterday just needs to be heated up. Promise me you'll eat. I promise. And Maya, whatever happens today, you did the right thing last night. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. The bus ride to the Meridian took 45 minutes, 3 transfers navigating the city's aging public transportation system. Maya used the time to run through possible scenarios, mentally preparing responses to various criticisms. By the time she arrived at the restaurant, she'd convinced herself she was about to be fired. The Meridian looked different in late afternoon light. The front entrance was locked. They didn't open until 5:30 on Saturdays, but Maya had a key to the staff door in the alley. Inside, the restaurant was quiet, that peculiar silence of a space waiting to come alive. The dining room was already set up for tonight's service. Tables arranged in their precise patterns, everything gleaming and ready. Gerald's office was on the 2nd floor, a small room that overlooked the dining room through a one-way window. Maya knocked on the door frame. The door itself was open, and waited for permission to enter. Torres, come in. Close the door behind you. Gerald sat behind a desk that was too large for the room, making the space feel cramped. He was younger than Maya had first thought when she started working here, maybe 35, with the prematurely receding hairline of someone who stressed too much. His tie was loosened, and there were papers spread across his desk in a way that suggested he'd been working through his day off. "Sit," he said, and Maya sat, hands folded in her lap, channeling every ounce of professionalism she possessed. Gerald studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "I got a call this morning, from Hiroshi Takahashi." Maya's heart rate spiked. "Oh." He wanted to express his appreciation for last night. "Said you provided exceptional service. Said you saved what could have been a catastrophic situation." Gerald paused. "He also said he's sending a formal commendation to the restaurant's owners, specifically mentioning you by name." Took Maya a moment to process this. Not fired, then. Definitely not fired. "That's good," she ventured. "It's very good," Gerald said. "Do you understand what it means when someone like Hiroshi Takahashi sends a formal commendation? It means he's telling everyone in his social circle that we're competent, professional, that we can handle high-stakes situations. That's worth more than any advertising we could buy." He leaned back in his chair. "It also means that I need to explain to the owners why I didn't know one of our servers spoke fluent Japanese." "I didn't think it mattered," Maya said honestly. "It's not like it comes up much. Last night was the first time anyone's needed it in the year I've been here. But it does matter. It matters a lot. We cater to an international clientele, and language skills are valuable. I should have known about this." He wasn't accusatory exactly, just stating a fact. "I'm updating your employee file. Going forward, if we have Japanese-speaking guests, you'll be their primary server, with appropriate compensation adjustment." "Compensation adjustment?" 20% increase in your base hourly. "It's not much, you make most of your money in tips anyway, but it's what I can authorize without going through corporate." Gerald pulled a paper from his desk. "I'll also be recommending you for a junior floor manager position when one opens up. The owners are impressed. And they should be." Maya felt dizzy. 20% increase in base pay was the difference between making rent with $50 to spare and making rent with $150 to spare. It was breathing room. It was the difference between constant anxiety and slightly less constant anxiety. "Thank you," she managed. "I appreciate that." "Don't thank me. You earned it." Gerald's expression softened slightly. "Where did you learn Japanese? Anyway, that's not exactly a common skill." So Maya told the abbreviated version of the story. Grandmother from Kyoto, childhood lessons, maintaining fluency out of respect and love. She left out the parts about the strokes, the medical bills, the way her entire life had reorganized around caregiving. Those details felt too personal, too vulnerable to share in an office that smelled like printer toner and ambition. Gerald listened, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he said, "Family is important. I get that." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Get ready for service. And Torres, thank you for what you did last night. You represented us well." The evening shift passed in its usual controlled chaos. Saturday nights at the Meridian were always busy. Every table booked, a waiting list for the bar, the kitchen running at full capacity. Maya moved through her section with practiced efficiency, her body remembering the choreography even as her mind kept drifting back to Gerald's words, to Takahashi's business card, to the strange feeling that her life was standing at some kind of crossroads. Around 8:30, during a brief lull between courses, Marcus cornered her by the coffee station. "So you're famous now," he said, grinning. "Gerald actually smiled when he talked about you at pre-shift. I didn't know his face could do that." "I'm not famous. I just did my job. You speak Japanese and no one knew. That's mysterious. That's like having a secret identity." He lowered his voice. "Some of the other servers are pissed, by the way. Jealous. You got praised and a raise in the same day. That doesn't happen here." Maya hadn't considered this angle, that success could breed resentment. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Doesn't matter. You still got it." Marcus wasn't being cruel, just honest. "Watch your back. That's all I'm saying. Not everyone is as happy for you as they should be. She thought about that as she finished the shift, hyper-aware now of the glances from other servers, trying to read whether they were friendly or hostile. By the time she counted her tips, a good night over $300. She was exhausted in ways that went beyond physical. The bus ride home took longer than usual, delays and detours that pushed her arrival past 1 a.m. The apartment was dark when she entered, just the glow of the nightlight in her grandmother's room. Maya moved quietly, checking on Keiko, asleep, breathing steady, before collapsing onto her own bed still half-dressed. Fun day was supposed to be her day off, but days off didn't really exist anymore. She woke at 8 to help her grandmother with morning routines, then spent the day catching up on everything else. Grocery shopping, meal prep for the week ahead, cleaning, laundry, scheduling appointments. At 3 p.m., she finally sat down with her grandmother for tea, a fun-day ritual they'd maintained since Maya moved in. "You're distracted," Keiko observed, watching Maya over the rim of her cup. They sat at the small kitchen table, the October sunlight streaming through the window, catching dust motes in its path. "Thinking about tomorrow," Maya admitted. "About whether to call that number." "Why wouldn't you?" "Because I don't know what he wants. Because it might be nothing, or it might be something that complicates everything. Because I have a system here, and systems are fragile." Keiko set down her cup with a soft clink. "When I came to America," she said slowly, "I was 22 years old. I spoke maybe 50 words of English. I knew no one except your grandfather, who I'd known for 6 months. My family in Japan was not happy with my choice." She smiled slightly. Understatement. They were furious. A Japanese woman marrying an American Marine in 1952? Shameful. Embarrassing. Maya had heard versions of this story before, but never quite like this. "I had a system too," her grandmother continued. "In Kyoto. A good job, family, friends, a whole life. And I walked away from it because something in my heart said it was time. It was terrifying. Most days that first year I cried. Missed Japan so much I felt sick with it. But I never regretted the choice. Not once." "This isn't the same thing," Maya protested. "You fell in love. This is just a phone call from a rich businessman." "It's a door opening," Keiko said firmly. "You don't know what's on the other side, but you know what's on this side. Same routine, same struggles, same limits. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it's not. Only you can decide." They sat in silence for a moment, the afternoon light shifting across the table. "I'm scared," Maya admitted quietly, "of anything changing. Because if things change, I might not be able to take care of you the way I do now." Keiko reached across the table and took Maya's hand. Her grip was weaker than it used to be, the fingers slightly crooked from arthritis, but still warm, still strong enough to communicate what words couldn't. "I don't want you to give up your life for me," she said. "I never wanted that. You didn't give it up. I chose it. And I'm telling you that you can choose something else. That you should." Keiko's eyes, still sharp despite her age, held Maya's gaze. "What happened at the restaurant? That was your skill, your gift with language that we worked so hard on together. You think I taught you Japanese so you could serve expensive food to rich people? No. I taught you so you could build bridges. So you could stand between worlds and help people understand each other. That's a rare thing, Maya. Don't waste it because you're afraid." Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail. And you get back up. That's life." Her grandmother squeezed her hand once more, then released it. "Make the call tomorrow. See what he wants. The worst that happens is you say no. The best that happens is... who knows? But you won't find out if you never look." That night, after helping her grandmother to bed, Maya sat at the small desk in her room and actually read the business textbook she'd been trying to study for weeks. The words made more sense now, connected to something real rather than abstract. She thought about Takahashi, about the way he'd looked at her when she'd spoken to him in his own language, not just heard but understood. She thought about the other servers at the Meridian, some supportive, some jealous. About Gerald's offer of a management track, which sounded good but meant more hours, more responsibility, more time away from home. About the delicate balance she'd built, precarious but functional, and how badly she wanted to believe there might be something more. At midnight, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would call the number. Not because she expected anything from it, but because her grandmother was right. It was a door, and she owed it to herself to at least look through it. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of October rain that felt like a preview of November's bleakness. Maya went through her morning routine on autopilot: coffee, breakfast, helping her grandmother dress and exercise, tidying the apartment. She had the lunch shift at the Meridian today, 3 to 9, which meant her morning was theoretically free. At 10 a.m., she sat on her bed, phone in hand, Takahashi's number pulled up on the screen. Her finger hovered over the call button for a full minute before she finally pressed it. The phone rang 3 times. Then a crisp female voice answered. Takahashi Global Ventures. How may I direct your call? Hi. My name is Maya Torres. Mr. Takahashi asked me to call him today. A brief pause. One moment, please. Smooth jazz filled the silence, the kind of hold music that probably cost more than Maya's monthly grocery budget. She waited, her heart hammering, half hoping she'd get voicemail, half terrified that she would. Maya Torres. Takahashi's voice was unmistakable, even over the phone. Thank you for calling. Of course. You asked me to. I did. Are you free for lunch today? Maya glanced at the clock. I have work at 3. Then we'll make it early. Noon at Café Mondavi? Do you know it? She didn't, but she could find it. Yes, I can be there. Excellent. See you then. He hung up before she could ask any of the 100 questions crowding her mind. Café Mondavi turned out to be in the financial district, a sleek modern space that probably catered to business lunches and power meetings. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, having taken an extra transfer and walked the last 6 blocks because she couldn't afford a rideshare and refused to be late. She waited outside, watching through the windows as well-dressed professionals conducted their affairs over expensive coffee and artfully arranged salads. Takahashi arrived exactly at noon, stepping out of a black car that pulled up to the curb like something from a movie. He wore a different suit than Friday night, charcoal gray again, but this one with subtle pinstripes, and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who'd never worried about money a day in his life. Torres-san, he greeted her. A slight bow that felt natural rather than performative. Thank you for meeting me. They were seated immediately, without waiting, at a table by the window. A server appeared instantly with menus and water, then vanished with the efficiency of someone who recognized Takahashi and knew better than to hover. Order whatever you like, Takahashi said. And Maya tried not to think about how the prices on this menu would have fed her and her grandmother for a week. She ordered a salad and soup, the least expensive combination that wouldn't seem suspicious. Takahashi ordered without looking at the menu, the kind of ease that came from eating here regularly, from never having to check prices or worry about budgets. I suppose you're wondering why I asked you here, Takahashi said once their orders were placed. The thought had crossed my mind. He smiled slightly. Direct. I appreciate that. I'll be equally direct. What you did Friday night, that wasn't just good customer service. That was cultural competency, linguistic skill, and crisis management all at once. Those are valuable abilities, and they're rarer than you might think. Maya waited, unsure where this was going. I have a problem, Takahashi continued. My company works extensively with Japanese partners, clients, and investors. Most of my American employees don't speak Japanese beyond basic greetings. Most of my Japanese employees don't speak English beyond business phrases. This creates constant friction, misunderstandings, opportunities for things to go wrong. You need translators, Maya said. I need more than translators. I need cultural liaisons. People who can stand between 2 business cultures and facilitate genuine understanding, not just word-for-word translation. He leaned back slightly. I need someone like you. The food arrived, perfectly timed to give Maya a moment to process. Her salad looked like it belonged in a magazine, every leaf arranged with artistic precision. She took a bite she barely tasted. I have a job, she said finally. At the Meridian. Yes, and you're good at it. Gerald made that very clear when I called him this morning to ask about you. You called my boss? I called to thank the restaurant and gather information. Standard practice. Takahashi cut into his meal, something with fish and complicated sauces. He thinks very highly of you. Also mentioned you're taking business courses online. Smart move. Maya felt simultaneously flattered and invaded. What exactly are you offering? A position at Takahashi Global Ventures. Initially as a junior liaison, working with our international partners. You'd be trained, mentored, given opportunities to develop your skills. The salary would be $75,000 to start, with performance bonuses, full benefits including health insurance, and tuition reimbursement if you want to finish your degree. $75,000. Maya's brain stuttered over the number. She made maybe $30,000 at the Meridian, if she was lucky and tips were good. $75,000 was life-changing. That was medical bills paid, debt cleared, breathing room, actual savings. That's very generous, she managed. It's market rate for someone with your skills in this city, Takahashi corrected. Actually slightly below market, given your fluency level. I'm betting on potential. He studied her face. You're skeptical. Why? Because things like this don't happen, Maya said honestly. Not to people like me. Not in real life. People like you, Takahashi repeated. What does that mean? She gestured vaguely at herself, at the cafe around them, at the invisible weight of everything she was carrying. People who take the bus, who work, nights and weekends, who don't have connections or advantages. Things like this happen in movies, not to actual people trying to figure out how to pay for their grandmother's medication. Something shifted in Takahashi's expression, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. You know what I saw Friday night? He asked. I saw someone who could have let me storm out, who could have watched a disaster unfold and thought, not my problem. Instead, you stepped up. You took a risk. You made things right. That's character. That's exactly what I look for in employees. Or maybe I was just terrified of losing my job if one of our biggest clients walked out angry. Maybe, he acknowledged, but you still acted. And you did it with skill and grace. He set down his fork. I'm not offering you charity, Torres-san. I'm offering you an opportunity because I believe you'd be an asset to my company. What you do with that offer is entirely up to you. They ate in silence for a moment. Maya's mind raced through calculations, what this money would mean, how it would change things, what she could do for her grandmother with actual financial stability. But underneath that was fear, cold and insistent. What if she failed? What if she couldn't handle a corporate environment? What if she left the Meridian and this new job fell through and she ended up with nothing? Can I think about it? She asked finally. Of course. Take a week. Call me next Monday with your answer. Takahashi pulled out another business card. This one with more numbers on it, direct lines and email addresses. In the meantime, these are resources about the company. Website, recent press, that kind of thing. Do your research. Make an informed decision. As they finished lunch, Takahashi asked about her grandmother. Genuinely interested questions that suggested he remembered everything from Friday night. Maya found herself relaxing slightly, talking about Keiko's translation work, her memories of Kyoto, the way she'd built a life in America without ever quite leaving Japan behind. She sounds remarkable, Takahashi said when Maya finished. My own grandmother was similar, one foot in the old world, one in the new. It's a hard balance. She made it look easy, Maya said. I think that was the trick. It was never easy, but she never let us see that. They parted outside the cafe, Takahashi returning to his waiting car, Maya to the bus that would take her to the Meridian. As she rode, she kept touching the business card in her pocket, reassuring herself it was real, that this had actually happened. The lunch shift at the restaurant felt surreal, like she was watching herself from outside her body. She smiled at guests, took orders, delivered food, all while her mind spun through scenarios and possibilities. Shanice noticed something was off and pulled her aside during a quiet moment. You okay? You seem weird. I'm fine. Just thinking. About what happened Friday? Sort of. Maya hesitated, then told her about lunch, about Takahashi's offer, about the impossible number attached to a job that sounded too good to be true. Shanice was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You should take it. Just like that. Just like that. Look, I love you. But you're too smart to be doing this forever." She gestured at the dining room around them. "This job is fine for me. I'm good at it, I make decent money, it's flexible around my kids' schedules. But you're capable of more. You should do more. What if I'm not ready?" "Who's ever ready?" Shanice squeezed her shoulder. "You jump and figure out the flying part on the way down. That's how life works." That night, after her shift, Maya sat with her grandmother at the kitchen table and told her everything. The lunch, the offer, the numbers that seemed fantastical, the fear that was keeping her from saying yes immediately. Keiko listened without interrupting, her tea growing cold as Maya talked. When she finally finished, her grandmother was quiet for a long time. Then she said in Japanese, "When I was your age, someone offered me a job, teaching Japanese at the university. Good pay, respect, security. And I turned it down because I was pregnant with your father, and in those days you didn't work when you were raising children. I've wondered sometimes what my life would have been like if I'd said yes. If I'd been brave enough to try." "You don't regret your choices," Maya protested. "You always said family was the most important thing." "Family is the most important thing. But that doesn't mean I never wondered. That doesn't mean I don't want better for you than just wondering." Keiko reached across and took Maya's hand. "I'm 87 years old. I've had a good life. But I'm not your responsibility. Not in the way you've made me. You're my grandmother. Taking care of you is something you chose," Keiko interrupted gently. "And I love you for it. But I don't want to be the reason you give up opportunities. We'll figure it out. We always do." Maya felt tears threatening again. "What if the hours are worse? What if I can't be here as much? Then we'll hire someone. With that salary, we can afford help. And maybe I move to a facility." "No, don't look like that. Some of them are nice. Your friend Shanice's mother is in that place on Maple Street. She likes it there. There are options, Maya. But only if you're brave enough to look at them." Later, in her room, Maya pulled out her tablet and researched Takahashi Global Ventures. The company was real, successful, with offices in 5 countries and an impressive portfolio of projects. Reviews from employees were largely positive. Good work culture, opportunities for advancement, competitive benefits. She looked at her own reflection in the darkened screen of her tablet. 26 years old. An unfinished degree. A service job that was fine but not a career. A life on hold, waiting for something to change. Maybe it was time to be the thing that changed. Maya called Takahashi the following Monday morning. Her hands trembled as she said the words, "I accept your offer." The transition happened faster than she'd imagined possible. 2 weeks' notice at the Meridian, where Gerald was disappointed but understanding, where Shanice threw her an impromptu goodbye party in the break room with grocery store cake and genuine tears. A week of orientation at Takahashi Global Ventures, where the office alone felt like a different universe. Glass walls, ergonomic chairs, coffee that didn't taste like punishment. The hardest part was the conversation about her grandmother's care. They interviewed 3 home health aides before finding Maria, a warm woman from El Salvador who made Keiko laugh and didn't mind that half their conversations happened in Japanese. The cost made Maya's stomach clench, even with her new salary, until she realized that for the first time in years, she could afford it without choosing between medication and groceries. Her first major project came 6 weeks in, facilitating negotiations between Takahashi's company and a manufacturing firm from Osaka. Maya sat in a conference room that overlooked the city, translating not just words but context, cultural nuances, the unspoken expectations that could make or break a deal. When the contracts were signed, Takahashi pulled her aside. "You're exactly what I knew you would be," he said simply. That night, Maya came home to find her grandmother and Maria cooking dinner together, the apartment filled with the familiar smell of sesame oil and something new, Maria's pupusas. A cultural exchange happening in real time in their tiny kitchen. How was work? Keiko asked in Japanese, and Maya realized she was asking not out of polite routine but genuine curiosity. The way you'd ask someone about their career, not just their day. Good, Maya said, then corrected herself. Great, actually. Really great. 6 months later, Maya enrolled in night classes to finish her degree. Tuition fully covered by the company. A year after that, she was promoted to senior liaison, managing a team of 3. She moved her grandmother into a larger apartment with an elevator and a view of the park. Close enough that Maya could visit daily, but far enough that both of them had space to breathe. The pearl earrings her grandmother had given her still brought luck, but now Maya wore them to board meetings and international conferences, to negotiations that shaped millions of dollars in contracts. She'd built a bridge between worlds, exactly as her grandmother had hoped, and discovered that the strongest bridges were the ones you crossed yourself, despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite every reason to stay safely on familiar ground. Sometimes she still dreamed about the Meridian, the crystal chandeliers, the garden terrace, the moment when everything changed. But now those dreams felt less like memories of where she'd been and more like reminders of how far she'd come. One brave decision at a time. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.